My wife tried to divorce me to get half my $16 million while I was injured. She didn't know I already had proof of her affair, the stolen money, and the secret account. She opened with her boss. Court day turned into a complete disaster for her. Hey, Reddit! I never thought I'd be the guy with a marriage disaster story, but here we are. My wife thought she found her golden ticket and tried to cash out on me. Turns out she didn't know who she was dealing with. Before everything blew up in court, let me start from the beginning. My name's Noah Reyes, 33 years old, software engineer, been married to Mira Dalton for almost 8 years. No kids, decent job, quiet life, or at least that's what it looked like from the outside. Not that long ago, I learned how fast a quiet life can flip. The car accident wasn't dramatic. Some guy slammed his brakes on the freeway, I swerved, hit the barrier, and the airbags did their job. I ended up with bruised ribs, a stiff neck, and a doctor who wanted me under observation for the night I wasn't dying. I wasn't even groggy, just annoyed and stuck in a hospital bed with an IV taped to my arm. So when Mira walked in, I expected maybe a little worry. You okay? Something. Anything human. Instead, she walked in wearing a beige blazer, heels, and a new haircut I didn't recognize. She looked like she came straight from a business lunch, not to check on her husband who literally bounced off a guardrail 2 hours earlier, and she wasn't alone. A tall guy in a tailored suit followed her inside, carrying a sleek leather folder like he was about to pitch a startup. He didn't acknowledge me, just stood there, hands folded, staring at the wall like he wanted to charge me for breathing his air. Mira didn't waste time. She pulled a stack of papers from her purse and let them drop onto my blanket-covered lap. "We're done, Noah," she said. "Sign them." I looked at the papers, then at her divorce papers. In a hospital bed. Classy. She crossed her arms like she was the one being inconvenienced. "Don't start. This is the cleanest way to do it. Grant will walk you through it." Grant gestured at the papers like he rehearsed it. "Mr. Reyes, this is a straightforward petition. Mrs. Dalton is entitled to half of the marital—" I raised a hand, cutting him off. "If you talk over me again, you can wait outside." He blinked, clearly not used to pushback. Mira scoffed. "Noah, stop acting difficult. We both know what you've been hiding." I stared at her. What exactly did I hide, Mira? She lifted her chin like she was delivering a verdict, the $16 million inheritance. "The letter came a few months ago. You left it on the counter. I read it. Don't pretend you didn't know I'd find out eventually." So that's how she found it. A letter with the trust valuation. I'd picked it up while grabbing the mail and must have tossed it on the counter before heading to work. My mistake was assuming she wasn't the type to dig through my personal documents like a raccoon with a credit score. She kept going. "You weren't honest with me. That's financial betrayal." "You opened a letter addressed to me," I said. "That's actual betrayal." Grant stepped forward again, clearing his throat. "Reyes, regardless of how the information was discovered," I cut him off again. "I said outside. Last warning." He went silent and stepped back. Mira shot him an irritated look, then turned back to me. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Just sign the papers, and we'll divide everything fairly." I picked up the first page, skimmed it, then let it fall back on the blanket. "You want half of $16 million? I asked calmly. "I'm your wife," she snapped. "I'm entitled." "You're entitled, all right," I said, "but not to my money." Her face tightened. She expected me to fold. That was obvious. Mira always believed she could talk her way through anything if she used the right tone, but I wasn't giving her the reaction she wanted. "Noah," she said, voice rising, "you are not walking out of this marriage with everything while I get nothing." "You walked out months ago," I replied. "You just picked today to make it official." She froze for half a second, just long enough for me to know she heard exactly what I meant. Grant finally spoke up again, quieter this time. "Mr. Reyes, refusing to cooperate will—" "Cooperate?" I said. "You walked into a hospital room demanding I hand over millions while I'm still wearing a wristband, with my blood pressure on it." Mira's eyes narrowed. "So that's your answer? You're not signing?" "No," I said. "Not today. Not here. Not the way you think." She clenched her jaw so tight I could see the muscle twitch. "Fine. Court it is." She turned toward the door, heels clicking like she wanted the whole floor to hear her rage. Grant opened the door for her and followed, avoiding eye contact. Before she left, Mira shot me one last glare. "You'll regret dragging this out." I leaned back against the pillow, meeting her stare without blinking. "We'll see." The door slammed behind them. The room went quiet again, except for the steady beep of the monitor. I wasn't panicked. I wasn't shocked. If anything, I felt the same strange calm I'd had for months. Because deep down, I already knew something was off, long before the accident. And if Mira thought divorce papers in a hospital bed were going to break me, She was about to learn exactly who she married. Before the hospital scene, before Mira dropped divorce papers on my lap like a parking ticket, things had already been sliding downhill for months. It started small, then picked up speed until it was impossible not to notice. Around the beginning of last fall, Mira shifted into someone I barely recognized. She used to be sharp but fair. She'd call something out if it needed calling out, but she wasn't cruel. Then suddenly, every little thing I did seemed to irritate her. If I wore a t-shirt she didn't like, she'd say, "Can you try looking like an adult for once?" If I cooked dinner, it was, "Did you even taste this before serving it?" It wasn't subtle either, it was constant. Always a complaint, always a sigh, always an implied, "You're not enough." At first I pushed back. I'm not the type to sit there nodding while someone tears into me. If she snapped at me over something dumb, I'd hit her with something direct like, "Try again without the attitude," and she'd usually storm off. That only made her more irritated, like she expected me to sit quietly and thank her for the feedback. Soon after the criticism kicked in, the late nights started. Work is crazy right now. Julian needed last-minute numbers reviewed. We have a client across time zones. Don't wait up. Before that, she barely stayed at the office past 5:30. Now it was multiple times a week. When she came home, she smelled like heavy perfume, not the kind she usually wore. And instead of dropping her bag and relaxing on the couch like she normally did, she'd go straight to the bathroom and lock the door. Her phone became her favorite child, always face down, always on silent. If it buzzed, she'd grab it like it was drowning, and she needed to rescue it. She'd tilt her body away from me while typing, shielding the screen so obviously it almost felt childish. One night I asked her directly, "Who keeps texting you this late?" She snapped instantly, "You don't need to monitor me, it's work." "Then flip the phone so I can see the time," I said. "No," she said, holding it tighter. "Because you twist everything." That told me everything. I didn't accuse her of anything, not yet. I didn't want to give her a reason to hide better. I needed evidence, not guesses. Mira was the type who'd spin a situation into a sob story about how I didn't trust her, and I wasn't giving her that chance. It got to the point where even our friends noticed. At a small get-together, Jake pulled me aside while Mira was outside on her phone. "What's going on with her?" he asked quietly. I shrugged. "You tell me." "She barely said a word to you the whole night," he said. "She only talked when Julian texted." I didn't respond. Jake scanned my face and said, "You think she's messing around, don't you?" "I think she's doing something she shouldn't," I said. Jake took a breath. "Then stop guessing. Get someone who can find out. You need a PI." I didn't disagree. I was already thinking about it. I just needed the right person. A week later, I sat in a small office in an old building downtown with Derek Rowe, an ex-cop turned private investigator. The place was neat but not fancy. One desk, 2 chairs, a cabinet full of folders, nothing on the walls except his license. He looked like he'd seen every kind of mess people could make of their lives. Late 50s, short gray hair, eyes that didn't miss anything. "So," Derek said, flipping open a blank notepad. "Tell me what's off." I gave him the short version. The sudden late nights. The criticism, the constant attitude, the secretive phone behavior, the times she claimed she was working, but her office parking lot was empty when I drove by. The way she'd get defensive before I even finished asking a question. He listened without interrupting, writing fast. "Could be stress," he said, though his tone said he didn't believe it. "Could be something else." "You got bank statements?" I handed him a folder. Last 6 months. Highlighted the parts that looked weird. He went through them, nodding. Cash withdrawals every other week, sometimes twice in a week. "You ask her about this." "She says she needed cash for stuff," I said. "Can't name the stuff." He put the papers down. Her work schedule. I gave him a printed copy she left on the home office desk. Plus, screenshots of her texted excuses over the past few months. He skimmed the pages. "You want surface-level checks?" he said. "Or full surveillance?" "Full," I said. "I'm not paying for guesses." Derek smirked slightly. "Most people say that, but don't mean it." "I mean it," I said. "I'm not confronting her until I know exactly what she's doing. I want truth, not guesses." He nodded once, firm. "Then I'll get you truth." We went over logistics, how he'd follow her, what records he'd pull, how he'd track her routes and phone patterns. I signed the agreement, paid the retainer, and stood up to leave. Derek said, "One last thing. If I find something, you want it straight or softened?" "Straight," I said. "Don't hold back." He nodded. "Then expect a call soon." As I walked out, I already knew deep down that whatever he found wasn't going to surprise me. The signs were all there. I just needed the final piece. and Derek was about to hand it to me. Derek didn't drag things out when his name popped up on my phone 2 weeks later. The first thing he said was, "You should come in today." No hesitation, no warm-up, just straight to the point that told me everything I needed to know. His office looked the same as before. Plain walls, dim lamp, old carpet, but the atmosphere was different. Derek had a manila envelope on his desk, thick enough that it bowed slightly in the middle. "Sit," he said. I sat. He slid the envelope toward me. "This is what you paid for." I opened it. The first thing on top was a series of printed photos, each with a timestamp in the corner. They weren't perfect, some taken from a distance, some a little grainy, but the subjects were unmistakable. Mira and Julian Marsh, her boss. In the first photo, they were entering a hotel downtown. Julian held the door. Mira walked in with her head down like she didn't want to be recognized. In another picture, they were sitting in his car at night, parked near the waterfront. Her hand was on his shoulder, his face leaned toward hers. In a third, they were walking out of a restaurant, his arm around her waist like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't feel my stomach drop. Feel my stomach. No shaking hands, no dramatic breath. I just felt confirmation. The final puzzle piece clicking exactly where I knew it belonged. Derek watched my reaction, probably checking if I was about to explode. When I didn't, he continued. "They meet regularly," he said. "Mostly Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sometimes Friday evenings, always consistent times, sometimes lunch, sometimes after work. But they're not hiding very well." He tapped the next set of papers. "And here's the financial part." I lifted the sheets. My name wasn't on most of it. Hers was. Lists of repeated ATM withdrawals. 200 here, 300 there. Some days she pulled twice in a row. The pattern stretched back almost a year. Dates aligned perfectly with the nights she called me paranoid for asking why she needed cash. Then Derek placed a separate stapled packet in front of me. "This is where it gets worse," he said. At the top of the page was the name of a bank. And right under it, Joint Savings Account holders, Mira Dalton, Julian Marsh. It hit like a slap, but my expression didn't change. I nodded and flipped through the pages. Transfers from our joint account going directly into this one. Regular deposits. A balance that made no sense unless they had been planning something for a while. "They're saving up," Derek said. "Probably for a place. Or an exit plan." He slid another sheet forward. This time printed emails. "Julian's wife Tessa got suspicious a while back," he added. "She found some of his emails on their home laptop and handed them over when she realized they involved your wife." The first email opened with Mira writing, "He won't notice. Noah never pays attention. He's too boring and stuck in routines to look at anything closely. Nice." Another email from her said, "Once we have enough saved, I'm done pretending. I want something real, something exciting." Julian replied, "Just hold on a little longer. We're almost there." Another message from Mira said, "Pulled another 300 today. I'll do more next week." Derek watched quietly, letting me read in peace. When I was done, I set the papers down and looked at him. "How sure are you about the dates and the withdrawals?" I asked. "Every photo is timestamped with location data. Every transaction is backed up with bank screenshots. And the account is legally in both their names. There's no wiggle room." "All right," I said. "Good. Most people need a minute," Derek said slowly. "You're taking this clean." "I already knew," I told him. "You just gave me the paperwork." He nodded. "So, what now? Confront her? Lawyer? Kick her out?" "No," I said. "None of that yet." Derek frowned. "You're letting her stay?" "I'm letting her think she's winning," I corrected. "She'll slip more when she thinks she's in control." "You're playing it quiet," he said. "I'm being smart," I replied. "I'd rather let her keep showing her real self than warn her she's cornered." He sat back. "That's cold." "It's necessary," I said, because confronting Mira right then would just reset her behavior. She'd switch to damage control mode. Cry, play victim, twist every word. I'd seen her do that in arguments before, turning herself into the wounded angel even when she was the one throwing the first punch. But as long as she thought I suspected nothing, she'd keep digging her own hole, and she was already halfway in. Derek packed the papers neatly and handed the envelope back to me. "Keep everything safe. You'll need it." "I will. And Noah," he added, "whatever you choose to do next, don't underestimate her. Entitled people don't like losing." "Good," I said, standing, "because I'm done letting her win." When I left Derek's office, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity, the kind that comes when the last piece falls into place, and the picture is exactly what you expected. On the way home, I stopped by the bank. I closed our joint savings and moved most of it into an account in my name only. I left just enough in checking for bills and groceries. If she wanted to keep playing rich for the aesthetic, she was going to do it with what was already in motion, not with anything new. That night, when I walked through the front door, Mira barely looked up from her phone. She gave me a fake annoyed sigh and said, "You're home late." I smiled just enough for her to see I wasn't bothered. "Yeah," I said. "Busy day." She had no idea how busy, and she had no idea what was coming. 8 years ago, right before I got married, I got a call I never expected. A distant uncle on my dad's side had died. We weren't close, so when the estate attorney reached out, I assumed it was about a keepsake or maybe a few $1,000s. Instead, he told me I'd inherited $14 million. Not a typo. Not a prank. $14 million. I remember sitting there holding the phone, overwhelmed, still stressed about wedding seating charts and whether the caterer bought the wrong salads. I was 25, broke, and suddenly staring at a number I had no idea how to handle. The attorney was blunt. Put it in an irrevocable trust before the wedding. If you get married first, it becomes messy. Establish it now and it stays yours. So I did exactly that. I didn't invest it myself, didn't pull from it, didn't use it for our life. I went right back to my regular salary while the trust quietly grew on its own. Over 8 years, it climbed from $14 million to about $16 million. Untouched, a distant safety net I rarely thought about. Then came the letter. A few months before the accident, the executor mailed a routine valuation update. Plain envelope, nothing dramatic. I tossed it on the kitchen counter and went to work. That was the mistake. Because what happened with Mira hadn't started with the letter. By then, she'd already been colder for months. Late nights at the office, work emergencies, unexplained cash withdrawals, secretive phone habits. The letter didn't cause the problems. It just gave her something bigger to aim at. When I came home that evening, she was unusually sweet. Too sweet. She made dinner, asked about my day, even laughed at a joke I didn't think was funny. Then, casually, she said, "You got mail." I put it on the table. Her tone was wrong. Performed. The next morning, she hugged me before work and told me to drive safe, something she normally half ignored. At lunch, she texted, "Hope your day's going well." Mira didn't send daytime texts, ever. That night, after she fell asleep early, I checked the counter. The envelope had clearly been opened and badly resealed. Warped flap. Different adhesive. Sloppy work. I didn't confront her. It wasn't the invasion of privacy that bothered me. It was how quickly her behavior had shifted. The sudden sweetness wasn't affection. It was calculation. Within a week, the act faded, and entitlement took its place. Mira started talking like she'd already won something. "We should upgrade the car. We deserve a better house. Stop being so careful with money. It makes us look cheap." Every "we" sounded like she thought she'd earned a stake in something she didn't even know the truth about. Then came the digs. "You never think big. Try not being so cheap. You owe me honesty." All while talking about finally living like adults, as if the money were already hers. And that's when I realized something important. She thought the inheritance was new. She thought it came during the marriage. She thought she was entitled to half. And I let her believe it. Not out of spite. Out of strategy. Because when someone thinks they've already won, they stop pretending. They stop hiding. They show you exactly who they are. So I never mentioned the trust being set up before the wedding. I never explained California law. I never pointed out that the money wasn't marital property, had never been touched, and legally belonged only to me. I just stepped back and watched. And the more confident she became, the more careless she got. Mira acted like she had already stepped into her new rich wife role, spending money we didn't have, making plans she thought I'd fund, and talking to me like she was the future owner of a fortune she had nothing to do with. Meanwhile, Derek, the PI, was tracking her movements, collecting photos, bank activity, and eventually the emails with Julian. By the time he handed me the packet showing the affair, the secret account, and the months of transfers she'd hidden from me, the picture wasn't surprising. It was confirmation. Her ego had inflated so far, it barely needed a nudge. The letter on the counter didn't create her betrayal, but it revealed it. All I had to do was let her keep acting like she'd already won. The balloon was already stretched thin. I was just waiting for it to pop. After the hospital scene, I called Alicia Mendoza, a family lawyer Jake recommended. He said she didn't waste time, didn't sugarcoat anything, and didn't lose. That was exactly what I needed. Her office was modern. Clean lines, glass walls, no unnecessary decorations. She gave off the same energy. Sharp, focused, and already 3 steps ahead. When I sat down, she slid a legal pad toward herself and said, "All right, Noah, tell me everything." I handed her the trust documents first. She read the dates carefully, flipping each page with the kind of precision you'd expect from someone who spent years dismantling bad marriages in court. Then I gave her Derek's investigation packet. The photos, bank statements, emails, the joint account Mira opened with Julian. She didn't flinch. She didn't gasp. She just took notes at a fast, steady pace. When she finished reading the last email, she set her pen down and said, "Your wife has no claim to the trust, Zero." "No wiggle room?" I asked. "Nope. It was funded before your marriage. California law is clear. She can throw whatever story she wants at the judge. It won't change a thing." I nodded. "Good." She skimmed back through Derek's documentation. "And this," she added, tapping the joint account page. "This is financial misconduct. The withdrawals, the secret account, the emails. She's basically gift-wrapped the case for us." I appreciated how blunt she was. No dramatic buildup. No legal jargon for theatrics. Just straight answers. "Here's what we'll do," she continued. "We're not correcting her assumptions yet. Let her walk in confident. Let her think she's entitled to half the 16 million. The judge will shut that down in seconds. And the moment that happens, everything else collapses for her." I agreed instantly. "She believes she already won. She's acting like it." "Good," Alicia said. "Overconfidence makes people sloppy." We went through everything line by line. She organized the documents into 3 clear categories. Trust timeline proves separate property. Financial evidence proves misconduct. Communications proves intent. Calm, strategic, airtight. Exactly what I wanted. Before leaving her office, we reviewed the likely courtroom sequence, how Mira's lawyer would argue, and where each piece of evidence would land. It felt like preparing for a chess match where the opponent didn't realize half their pieces were missing. When I stepped outside the building, the plan was locked. Back at home, Mira acted like she'd won the lottery. She came through the door carrying 2 shopping bags from stores she usually avoided. Because of the price tags, she tossed them on the couch like trophies. "We need nicer furniture," she said. "This stuff makes the place look cheap." I didn't respond. I just watched her wander around the living room, with that inflated confidence she'd been wearing ever since she snooped through the letter. Over the next week, she spent money like she was speedrunning financial ruin. New clothes, appointments at expensive salons, lunches at places she used to call unnecessary, random online packages showing up every other day. Every purchase came with a comment that made her ego show, "You should have been spending like this years ago. Finally, we can live properly. Don't worry, you'll get used to quality." Then she added a dig almost every time. "You're just cheap. You never think big enough. Try being less lazy about money." I didn't react, not even a flinch. I just made a mental note of the dates and receipts. Everything might matter later. One night she snapped at me for not wanting to go out to a dinner that was already expensive before she added appetizers for the aesthetic. "You act like we're broke," she said. "Stop being so small-minded." I looked at her calmly. "You're spending money we don't have right now." She scoffed. "Please, you're dramatic." I didn't push further. The more she talked, the more she exposed who she really was. Derek was right. Entitled, people don't like losing. And Mira was building herself a fantasy she thought she owned. I let her talk. I let her overreach. I let her keep digging. In the meantime, Alicia filed our response and a counterclaim on my behalf, and began prepping the official evidence packet. Everything matched. Everything lined up. Everything was provable. There wasn't a loose thread anywhere. A few weeks later, after the court finished shuffling dates around, Alicia called me. "The judge accepted the filing," she said. "Your court date is set." "Good," I replied. "Keep doing what you're doing. Stay calm. Don't feed her any information. Let her think you're clueless." "Trust me," I said. "She already does." By the time I hung up, Mira was in the kitchen talking loudly on the phone, pretending she was planning her new future. She had no idea that the countdown had already started. The morning of court, the hallway outside the courtroom felt like every sound was turned up. Heels clicking, paper shuffling, people whispering. I walked in with Alicia beside me, calm and collected. She carried one folder. That was all she needed. Mira showed up 10 minutes later like she was arriving at a premiere hair. Perfectly styled, long coat that looked brand new, jewelry she definitely bought during her spending spree. She walked with her chin up, scanning the room like she expected cameras. Not once did she look in my direction, just assumed I'd be intimidated by the entrance. Behind her, sitting in the last row, was Julian Marsh. He wore a stiff blazer and had his hands clasped under the bench like he was trying to hide them. His eyes darted everywhere except toward me. Smart move. Mira took her seat at the petitioner's table with Grant LaVille, who looked confident in the artificial way people do when they practice their speech in the mirror. Mira crossed her legs, smoothed her coat, and kept a smug half-smile like she already knew the verdict. She didn't. When Judge Marin Holt entered, the room snapped into silence. She had the presence of someone who didn't tolerate nonsense, a straight posture, and a voice that carried without effort. "We're here for the dissolution of marriage between Mira Dalton and Noah Reyes," she said. "Petitioner, you may begin." Grant stood, buttoned his jacket dramatically, and started. "Your Honor, my client has endured significant emotional and financial mistreatment. Throughout this marriage, Mr. Reyes withheld major financial information from her, restricted access to funds, and maintained a pattern of emotional distance and neglect. I didn't move arms crossed. Calm expression. My face said everything. Prove it." Grant continued. "Mrs. Dalton filed for divorce because she could no longer tolerate a husband who exerted control over finances and kept her dependent while hiding substantial assets." Mira nodded aggressively. Like each word was a sacred truth, Judge Holt turned to me. "Mr. Reyes, any response to these claims?" "No," I said. "Alicia will handle it." Alicia stood. No theatrics, no deep breath, no grand opening line. Just business. "Your Honor, I'll begin with the financial matter my opposing counsel mentioned." She placed a single sheet on the evidence table. "This is the trust establishment document. It shows the trust was funded 8 years ago, days before my client's wedding. The asset in question, currently valued at $16 million, is separate property." Grant froze. Mira blinked rapidly, her smile twitching. Judge Holt examined the document. "Date of funding is prior to marriage. Counsel, did you review this?" Grant cleared his throat. We were under the impression that the inheritance was recent." "Your impression was wrong," Alicia said, not even bothering to soften it. Grant hesitated. Mira's smug confidence cracked for the first time. She leaned toward him and whispered something sharp, but he didn't look at her. Alicia moved to the next piece. "Now on to Mrs. Dalton's financial conduct." She placed another set of papers down. "These documents show $42,000 withdrawn by Mrs. Dalton from the joint marital account over the last year. This was done without Mr. Reyes's knowledge or consent." Judge Holt frowned. "What were these funds used for?" Alicia didn't speak. She handed over the next packet. Bank statements showing the joint hidden account labeled under Mira Dalton and Julian Marsh. Julian stiffened at the mention of his name. Mira whipped her head around to glare at him, like it was his fault the evidence existed. "This account," Alicia continued, "received the stolen funds. And here," she pulled out printed emails, "are communications between Mrs. Dalton and Mr. Marsh discussing withdrawing money and using it for a future together." Judge Holt flipped through the emails. One quote caught her attention. She read it aloud. "He won't notice. Noah never pays attention. He's boring." Mira's face drained. Julian stared at the floor, motionless. Grant looked like he wanted to teleport out of the building. Alicia paused just long enough for the weight to sink in. Additionally, Mrs. Dalton described plans to save enough money before leaving her husband. These messages make intent very clear. Mira suddenly stood. "That's taken out of context. I wouldn't have said any of that if Noah had been supportive. He ignored me. He made me feel small. Judge Holt held up a hand. "Sit down, Mrs. Dalton." Mira kept talking. "This is twisted. He's lying. Those emails aren't even—" "Sit down." The whole room went silent. Mira sat, but not quietly. She muttered under her breath, contradicting herself, stumbling between anger and panic. Judge Holt looked at Grant. "Do you have any evidence of your claims of abuse?" Grant swallowed. "We have statements from Mrs. Dalton. Do you have neutral third-party evidence?" The judge clarified. "No, Your Honor." Judge Holt nodded once, decisively. That was the end of it. After a few moments reviewing the documents again, she set them down and looked directly at Mira first, then at me. "My ruling is as follows," she said. "The trust valued at $16 million is clearly separate property. Mr. Reyes retains full ownership." Mira's shoulders collapsed inward, like someone let all the air out of her. "Mrs. Dalton is ordered to repay the $42,000 taken from the marital account." Mira's mouth fell open. 42? That's not... Judge Holt continued, ignoring her. "Mrs. Dalton will also pay Mr. Reyes's legal fees. And given the documented financial misconduct, I am referring the financial records in this matter to the District Attorney's Office for possible review." You could have heard a pin drop. Mira's eyes filled instantly. She shook her head, whispered something like, "No, no, no," while gripping the table. This wasn't tears from heartbreak. It was panic. Panic that the fantasy life she built was gone. Behind her, Julian stood silently and slipped out through the back door, pale and restless, like he'd just escaped a burning room. Mira watched him leave, and completely unraveled, Judge Holt stood. "Court adjourned." I didn't say a word. Didn't look at Mira. Didn't look at Grant. I just walked out with Alicia, calm and steady. The truth was out, and everything Mira tried to build on lies collapsed right in front of her. The minute the court doors closed behind me, my phone started vibrating. "Mira, 5 missed calls in 3 minutes." By the time I reached the parking lot, it was 11. By the time I was in my car, it was 17. She didn't slow down, not even for a second. Voicemails poured in, crying, shouting, blaming, begging. Every tone she knew how to use. I didn't listen to any of them. I wasn't interested in rewrites of her own history. On the second night, after call 40-something, I answered once. She jumped on the line instantly. "Noah, please, just listen. I'm sorry." I wasn't thinking straight. Julian pressured me. I didn't mean any of it. "You know I was hurting." "No," I said. "I'm not doing this." She kept talking fast and frantic. "We can fix this. You don't have to go through with any of it. You know I didn't mean to steal. I was confused. You pushed me away. I made a mistake. Don't let them prosecute me. Please. I don't have anyone else." I let her finish her rambling and said one sentence. "You're only sorry because you got caught." Silence. A real one this time, not the dramatic kind she used for attention. This one came from impact. Before she could start another excuse, I hung up and blocked her number permanently. She didn't know it yet, but that was the last conversation we would ever have. The fallout hit fast. Tessa Marsh, Julian's wife, got a copy of the court documents through her attorney. I heard about it through Jake. Apparently, Tessa didn't waste a minute. She filed for divorce the same week, submitted the evidence, and moved out with their kids. Julian tried to smooth things over at work, but the emails in the court file were too explicit. He had been using company hours, company resources, and a subordinate for his affair. HR handled it quietly, but the result wasn't subtle. He was out. No severance, no negotiation, just a clean cut. His entire VP of something important persona evaporated in a single meeting. After that, he disappeared from social media, probably trying to salvage whatever he could. It wasn't much. Meanwhile, Mira's world shrank fast. Her parents picked her up from the courthouse. She moved back into their small house 2 towns over. Word travels, especially when someone spends months bragging about becoming wealthy and then has the opposite happen in front of a judge. She started telling anyone who would listen that I ruined her future. According to her, I manipulated the courts, lied under oath, and stole her life. She left out the part where she opened a secret account with another man and drained our funds into it. She left out the affair. She left out her own words in the emails. I didn't correct her story. I didn't need to. People aren't stupid. They knew Mira eventually got a retail job. Not high-end, something basic, enough to keep her busy while she figured out how to repay the $42,000 and the legal fees she owed. She wasn't happy. Every update I heard from mutual acquaintances made it clear she was still furious. At me, at Julian, at the judge, at the entire planet. Her anger didn't move me. It wasn't my responsibility to fix the choices she made. I moved into my new place within a month. A quiet 2-bedroom condo with a view of the hillside, clean, modern, nothing flashy. Just my space. Peaceful, predictable, and mine. No slammed doors, no hidden bank statements, no accusations over nothing. Alicia checked in a few times to make sure everything post-court was handled. Derek sent me a one-line email. Glad it worked out. I kept my circles small, stayed private, focused on rebuilding the parts of my life Mira had been slowly draining. There was no bitterness, just relief. 3 months later, I got a message request on LinkedIn from Julian Marsh. The message was long, half angry, half self-pitying. He blamed me for destroying 2 households, called me vindictive, claimed I should have handled things like a man instead of running to court. He ended it with some nonsense about karma. I read it twice. Then typed one reply, "You destroyed your own life. I just refused to let you use mine to pay for it." I hit send and blocked him. That was the moment I felt it. Actual peace. Not the forced calm I had during the investigations. Not the controlled focus I held in court. Real peace. Quiet, clean, and steady. The damage was cleaned up, and the future was mine again. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.